Now, from one election battle to another, the first round of the French presidential election saw two outsiders take on and defeat the country's major parties. The runoff in a fortnight's time will see the independent centrist Emmanuel Macron go head-to-head with Marine Le Pen from the far-right National Front. We're live to Paris now, and STV News' senior reporter, Gordon Cree.
John, I've been in Paris for a few days now, and it's fair to say there is a degree of tension in the air. This is a country that has been troubled. There have been terrorist attacks in recent years. There's been unease about migration, about integration among communities. There's been economic problems, high unemployment, an unpopular president, and that has meant that the election campaign has been fought at a pretty high temperature. Well, things have turned out in the way many people predicted, not necessarily in the order that they predicted. This report contains flash photography. He is the man in the middle, the centrist Emmanuel Macron, in confident mood today. Having topped the first round of voting, he's calling for the support of wider France to propel him to the presidency.
Ne renoncez jamais.
Never give up, never forget those months where you've changed our country's path.
In his way, Marine Le Pen, the self-styled champion of the provinces of this divided country.
La réalité, c'est que Monsieur Macron n'est en aucun cas un patriote.
Mr. Macron is in no way a patriot. His politics don't defend any trace of patriotism.
Trace de patriotisme.
Well, this is what it's all about, the Élysée, the president's residence. And for the first time in living memory, it will be occupied by neither a Republican, a Conservative, nor the socialists of the incumbent François Hollande. Instead, it will be one of these two, both Macron and Le Pen coming from outside the traditional parties. Security was tight at polling stations in the wake of last week's terrorist shooting of a policeman in Paris. Voter turnout was around 80%, that's nearly 37 million people. And as the ballots were counted, it soon became clear the runoff would be between Macron and Le Pen. As that result sank in, the Macron camp hosted a huge event in the capital. Emmanuel Macron has worked a long time for this moment. The thousands of his supporters who've packed into this rally now know that, barring disaster, their man, that man, will be the next president of France.
Vive la République! Vive la France!
So I'm feeling very, very happy, so much excited. This is crazy, you know, this is so good for my country. I'm very proud of my country.
We are very happy, it's amazing because we didn't really believe at the beginning in his victory, but we are very happy.
More than 100 miles away in her stronghold of northern France, Marine Le Pen was defiant.
C'est la grande alternance. L'alternance fondamentale.
They're deeply attached to their nation and we're going to win.
I am very happy, just as happy as I was when my grandchildren were born.
Le Pen led the way in the polls for months. Much of today's analysis has been about why she slipped to second.
When you have the Champs-Élysées attack on Thursday night, many people feared that this attack could, in a way, help Marine Le Pen because she says she's very tough against terrorists. It did not happen, so for her, this is a real disappointment.
11 have now become 2. A week on Sunday, voters here go back to the ballot box to make the ultimate decision about who becomes their new leader. Well, that's where we stand so far. There has been a development tonight in the election race. Marine Le Pen saying that she is quitting the leadership of her National Front party in order to try and unite people behind her. Well, we're joined now live by the political commentator Nabila Ramdani, who's a close observer of the French political scene. That news about Marine tonight, why has she done that?
Well, it has to be said it's quite an astute political move as Marine Le Pen is trying to broaden her base to go through the second round of the election and face Emmanuel Macron. And what she's trying to do effectively is to distance herself from the toxic brand of the National Front, which is still associated with racism, anti-Semitism, fascism and political violence, just as she tried to stage a schism with her father, who in effect remains the honorary president of the party and who still poured some 6 million euros into funding her campaign. But what she's also hoping to achieve is to build herself to put herself in the posture of General de Gaulle, who was the most famous ever president of France, and put herself in the place of a universal leader as opposed to a political leader. But I don't think that many people would buy that.
Over the past few months, she has topped many of the polls. She finished second last night. Why did she do less well than many expected?
Well, indeed, she was expected to win and she in fact lost. And I predict that she will lose again against Macron, who will win by a landslide. What she effectively happened is she was able to rally her core and usual FN supporters, but no more than that. The FN traditionally enjoys a score between 25 and 30%, but never gets much higher than that. And I expect that she will find it extremely difficult to pick up more votes in the final round.
Now, François Hollande has today backed Macron. Macron, a man who has presented himself as being an outsider, maybe not quite as much of an outsider as he would attempt to make people believe. But what would his presidency mean for France?
I think he's trying to unite people. He has a more conciliatory tone when it comes to social problem and cohesion in France. He also wants to modernize France economically. He has experience in the real world and he wants to be pragmatic about the economy, project France on a more global scale while preserving, traditional core values of France. But that doesn't mean that he won't have any troubles ahead, not least of all because he will have to find alliances ahead of the legislative elections in June. But I think at the very least he would have achieved to distance himself from the toxic politics at the moment and indeed the political crisis that's engulfing, France.
Just briefly, we've heard this described as a divided country. Certainly among the Macron supporters, there's a lot of optimism. Which is the feeling among the general public in France?
I think there's a lot of optimism in the sense that there is hope and founded hope that Marine Le Pen can be kept out thanks to the so-called Republican Pact, which means that voters of all political persuasions will unite to block her in the final round so as to avoid the Le Pens getting into the Elysee Palace.
OK, Nabila Ramdani, thank you very much for joining us on Scotland Tonight. Well, what happens next in the French elections? A lot of campaigning in the next couple of weeks before that final round on the 7th of May. Then more campaigning because the parliamentary elections take place in June. From the Scotland Tonight team in Paris, back to you, John.
Gordon, thank you.